Okay, great. So again, welcome everyone to the capacity building workshop organized by PARMS. This is for the EPR compliance, which includes questions on footprint accounting and as such. So again, welcome. Just a reminder, we do have a video of the previous workshop on our YouTube channel. This entire presentation will be recorded and also will be sent to all those who registered. So you'll be able to get a copy of this full presentation. And if you have any questions, please put it on the chat box and we'll discuss that later after the full presentation. So for today's agenda, we'll be discussing questions on registration as well as the footprint accounting and how to offset your footprint. So let's begin with questions on registration. It's more on how do we join PARMS. PARMS, of course, is an organization and we also have an EPR program. And also questions on how to register in the PARMS EPR program. Is there any proof of registration? And how should we register? When should we register? And is there a deadline? And of course, how to determine if you are an obliged enterprise. So as I mentioned, to join PARMS, we have several membership tiers from investing partners, conglomerate members, corporate members, association member, academic partners, and waste diverters. And for investing partners, there are two levels. So if you're a company that has sales of 30 billion and above, our membership fee is 2.5 million. And if it's below 30 billion, it's 1.5 million. For conglomerate members, it's 100,000 for local companies, $2,000 for international companies. These are annual dues. And for corporate members, it's 50,000 for local companies and $1,000 for international. So for investing partners, what are included are lifetime membership of the EPR portal, including their subsidiaries or affiliates, if they're actually coming in as a collective. They're also entitled to voting rights. And just take note that any FMCGs or multinational companies and brand owners are required to join as investing partners. For association members, technology partners, and academic partners, membership fees are waived. Joining PARMS EPR program, our membership fee is actually 100,000 per year, subject to evaluation. And what are the benefits of joining PARMS? Number one, ensures compliance with the provisions of Section 44E through the submission and registration of the program to DNR last February 2, 2023. We will also assist the waste diversion requirements of our obliged enterprise through its network of recognized waste diverters. And by leveraging collective strength and action, PARMS is able to provide its members a competitive edge dealing with waste diverters that may result in cost savings as well. We will also have periodic capacity building programs such as this for discussion, learning, collaboration, and sharing of best practices. And of course, as a collective industry organization, PARMS serves as a strong voice working towards favorable policies and regulations that align with the interest of its members and promote sustainable practices. And lastly, by fostering a cooperative environment, PARMS is able to promote synergy and collective action among all stakeholders in the supply and waste value chain. To join PARMS, we have obliged enterprise, volunteer entities, also waste diverters, and third-party auditors can also be part of PARMS. So for obliged enterprise, as I've mentioned, the fee is 100,000, valid for a year currently, but subject to evaluation and approval. And it includes being able to attend capacity building workshops like this, and also use the portal, which later on will show you all the features that you'll be able to do with the portal. And for volunteer entities, same thing as an obliged enterprise, they can also use the portal for their purchase of waste credits. They can also attend capacity building workshops such as this, and also included in our EPR program membership roster. For waste diverters, being part of the PARMS program, EPR program, we will recognize them as a waste diverter. We'll also have capacity building programs for them, and to be able to use the EPR portal so that they can report their diversion quantities, which is a requirement. They need to have their diversions audited and certified, and also set price of their waste credits on the portal, sell their audited credits directly to the obliged enterprise through the portal. For third-party auditors, of course, being part of the program, they're recognized as a third-party auditor. It also opens them up to all the obliged enterprises. Also, we will have capacity building workshops for them so that they can familiarize themselves with the law and how to go about it. And lastly, the use of the portal. This will allow them to audit waste footprints, generate certificate for obliged enterprises, also audit the waste diversion, and generate certificates for waste diverters. So let's go to how to register to the PARMS EPR program. So this is now the portal. So when you go to our website, www.parms.com.ph, you can click on the EPR portal, just click on register now, and then you can select obliged enterprise, and then you choose your role, and then you fill up the personal details, company details, pretty much very basic. This is how it's going to look like. So you will have a choice of which type of obliged enterprise are you: an investing partner, a subsidiary, affiliate, and an EPR member, and also volunteer members. And to complete the registration, obliged enterprise needs to submit all documentary requirements. That's the letter of intent, board resolution, SEC documents, BIR form 2303, mayor's permit, sworn statement. We will also need audited plastic footprint for rigid and flexible separately. Also, their diversion footprint for rigid and flexible separately. Reduction reports will also be part of the requirements to complete the registration, and lastly, the proof of payment. For volunteer entities, we only need a letter of intent. And for waste diverters and third-party auditors, we're still finalizing on those requirements. So is there a proof of registration? When you register to the portal, you're basically pre-approved, pending final approval. Of course, like what I mentioned, you need to complete your documentary requirements, pay the fees and all. So what do you get when you are registered in the portal, pre-approved? So first, you get full access to the portal already. You also get to be included in the updated PARMS EPR program roster. You'll also have access to the copy of the PARMS EPR program that we have submitted to DNR, together with our draft interim standards, including all attachments and registry roster. However, do take note that companies who registered late may not be on the roster that was submitted to DNR, but expect it to be in the supplement submissions. So as a pre-approved registration, you get to submit your unaudited waste footprint. You also get to appoint a third-party auditor. So let's say you're working with an auditor, you can ask them to register in the portal and you get to link them to your account. And then you can also start declaring your audited footprint through them, upload those audited reports. So you also get to do advanced booking for your plastic credits requirement, and PARMS can help you with that. So we're already going to start accepting advanced booking for credits, and you can set the price of how you would want to purchase and how much you want to purchase, and we will consolidate all those requests so we can start negotiating with waste diverters.
Can I just mention?
Yes.
We already, just for the information of everybody, we already secured 20,000 tons of credits from a co-processing facility. And we are going to offer it at 5 pesos per kilogram. That's why it's related to the advanced booking. We already have credits that are available. I will not mention what company, but we already have it. And so that's for the information of everybody. Thank you.
For the 5 pesos per kilogram of waste credit, is that for rigid or flexible?
Sorry, that's for flexibles.
Flexibles. Okay.
Yeah.
Or the 20 tons is for flexibles.
20,000 tons. Yeah.
20,000.
Okay. Do you have did you secure something for rigid bottles?
Not yet. It's premature to. We're still negotiating.
Okay.
Rolly, just to chime in, let me just share, the 5 peso per kilo is transferred at cost. This is cost. PARMS is not making any profit out of it. We do not intend to make any profit on whatever credits that we secure from our waste diverters. We are working on rigids. It's a challenge because surprisingly, rigids at this point is being offered at a higher price. So we are currently negotiating with entities. But yeah, rest assured, no, that we'll come up with the rigids very soon.
So
So
yeah,
that's the benefit of being a member, like you don't have a markup, something like that.
We don't
yes.
feel that we need to mark up because you already paid your registration
Yeah,
cost.
that's,
This
that's
is
the
a service.
benefit of membership, I think.
Correct. There's a raised hand from Jerry of Epson.
So do we need to have the footprint uploaded first and then audited before we can purchase or advance
No.
book?
No, you don't need to have the audited footprint. You can already advance book even
Okay.
without the audited footprint.
Okay, thank you, Seth.
So yeah, just to reiterate, all the payment will go directly to the waste diverters. It will not go through PARMS. We basically just help with the negotiation, but all payment will go directly to the waste diverters. Once you have completed the documentary requirements, automatically there will be a system generated certificate of registration. This is now the proof of registration that you may have under the PARMS ZWTN EPR program. And also, you will be, as approved registered obliged enterprise, you will be included in the list of complying entities in the EPR program roster upon submission of the ECAR. And official receipts of the EPR membership fee will be issued and uploaded to the portal and made available upon request. Just to take note, if an obliged enterprise fails to complete the documentary requirements by March 29 of next year, the obliged enterprise will automatically be removed from the EPR program roster by the system. So it's very important that obliged enterprise completes their registration. So when should we register and is there a deadline? Let me just start with the RA 11898, where it says that 6 months following the effectivity of the EPR Act of 2022, all obliged enterprise should establish or phase in EPR programs for plastic packaging to achieve efficient management of plastic packaging waste, reduce production, importation, supply, or use of plastic packaging deemed low in reusability, recyclability, or retrievability, and plastic neutrality through an efficient recovery and diversion schemes. In short, the deadline was February 12, 2023. And non-registration is one of the offenses under the law, and penalty can range from 5 million to 10 million. Next is, are you an obliged enterprise? So if you're a large enterprise with 100 million in assets, except land, with plastic footprint, then of course you're an obliged enterprise. However, if you're not a large enterprise, even though you have footprint or not, but you can join as a volunteer and participate in the EPR program. And lastly, if you are a large enterprise, but you don't have any footprint, let's say you calculate your internal footprint and then you check with your customers if they're obliged enterprise or not, then you deduct that from your footprint and determine that you have zero footprint upon auditing, then you have actually a choice to become an obliged enterprise or not. But we do recommend to actually register as an obliged enterprise because by principle of law, if you're a large company, then you should register for your protection to avoid any problems with DNR. So obliged enterprises are recommended to calculate their footprint by June 30, 2023. So again, you have to check if your customers are obliged enterprise or not. You document and deduct the footprint of your obliged enterprise customers and get the net footprint. And that footprint is your responsibility. And you have to have this audited by an independent third-party auditor. So again, remember, if your footprint is zero, we still recommend to have this audited as proof if DNR does check if you're registered as an obliged enterprise and upload your audited footprints, which is equal to zero. In this case, PARMS will be able to represent you when DNR does any questioning. By July 15, 2024, we will be submitting our consolidated audited footprint report for rigid and flexible separately for 2022, together with audited plastic credits offset in 2023, together with audited reduction programs. So now let's move on to the next part of the presentation, which is questions on footprint calculation. So is there a guide for computing our footprint? Upon registration to the PARMS EPR portal, as I've mentioned, there will be a link available to download a copy of the PARMS ZWTN EPR program together with our draft standards. However, please do note that these standards were developed prior to the implementation of the RA 11898 or the EPR Act. So there might be instances where they don't really apply directly. However, we do encourage our members to use these standards as a starting point because your feedback is crucial in refining and optimizing these standards to align better with the requirements of the EPR law. These are basically the complete standards that you will be able to access together with our EPR program. The 201 and the 202 are actually those that are related to footprint accounting. So what are the footprints covered by the EPR law? So let's just go back to that. Again, sachets, labels, laminates, and other flexible packaging, plastic packaging, rigids, plastic, which includes also promotional materials like tarpaulins. And then there's plastic bags and polystyrene. And there are packaging that are not covered under our EPR program. And these are reusable durable goods and returnable plastic packaging, such as trays, crates, pallets, bulk tanks, and the likes. That does not end up as post-consumer waste. We also do not include paper packaging, whether coated or not, or laminated with wax or plastic, where recovery for recycling or treatment falls under paper being its dominant material, and classified as paper under the Waste Analysis and Characterization Study guidelines developed by the National Solid Waste Management Council. Also, we don't include biodegradable or compostable waste and other alternatives compliant to the Philippine national standards. We also don't have in our EPR program used beverage cartons, or commonly known as Tetra Pak, where recovery for recycling or treatment falls under paper, being its dominant material, and classified as recyclable paper under the National Solid Waste Management Council wax guidelines. So any other not required by law under Section 44C is also not included in our EPR program.
Yeah, I
Yes.
have a follow-up question on this. So you mentioned that biodegradable or compostable plastics are not included in the EPR program. So for example, our bottles are biodegradable. So we don't count those in the accounting of the plastic footprint.
Yeah, let me chime in, Zed. No? Just to be clear, no, in the EPR program of farms, we have listed this as part of our exclusion list. However, DENR has yet to make a decision as to whether biodegradable or compostable plastic will be excluded. So in the case study, it would be better to include it, but you can exclude it if you want. But then if the government tells us later that this should be included, we will have no choice but to include it.
So for now, since there's no decision yet, we can exclude that in the footprint accounting.
Your call, no? Pero baka
Yeah. I mean,
DNR
there's no decision yet, so we can probably. Okay.
Yeah. Then if DNR, but we are recommending for you to record that so that if
Yeah,
DNR
we
says,
do
dapat
record
naman niyan, we'll do it.
Yep.
Diba?
But it won't be retroactive like we recorded it 2022. But
Yeah.
Okay.
Ted, Jerry here from Epson.
Yes, Sir Jerry.
So the 20% requirement will be composed of the combination of the three classifications. Am I correct? The rigid, the flexible, and polystyrene? Or can be applied to one category only? For example, we just buy for flexi, then it will be the 20% of our total plastic inventory, and then we're done for 2023, correct?
Yeah, so the 20% will apply to both rigid and flexible. So you have to have 20% for flexibles, 20% for rigid
For the total. Okay.
for each type.
Okay.
And
Clear.
just to add, Jerry, there's only two categories, rigid and flexible.
So we don't account for the polystyrene anymore.
So the polystyrene, you will have to account for that as either a rigid material or a flexible material. So for your PS foams, then you categorize that as, well, you have a choice now, where you want to categorize that. It can actually, the paper, PS foam paper, like styrofoam, can be categorized as flexible. And then your EPS, which I believe you have EPS, the EPS can be as part of rigid. But again, the government is not telling us where you categorize it. You can categorize it as either rigid or flexible as long as you recover it equivalently. Ganun lang kasimple usapan.
Okay, okay. Got
And
it.
the wage credit cost for flexible is lower actually.
Right now, that's a challenge. I don't agree rigids should be more expensive. No?
Yeah,
That's why farms is working. I think you guys will agree with me. No? Why should I go rigid if the credit cost is so expensive?
Yes, yes.
Farms is working on that. Kumita na sila, papatong pa sa medyo ano eh, di ba?
It should be the same actually.
We're working on that. Rest assured that because we're big enough, no, we are working on that to see how we can bring the prices lower for rigids.
All right. So moving on, here are some potential approaches for the first year of implementation, how to compute the footprint calculation. You can do inventory computation, wherein you can have your incoming materials inventory. You subtract that from your factory waste, ending up with your net material inventory, either rigid and flexible. So that's one way to compute it. And another way is the SKU computation, wherein you compute the weight per SKU multiplied by the net sales. Net sales meaning subtracting any rejects or returns, and that you will end up with your plastic footprint. And also, again, promotional materials needs to be included and will be added on your plastic footprint.
Hi, Zed. Sorry. Can you clarify a bit in terms of promotional item? What does it exactly mean? Is it the promotional giveaway that we give, such as toys, or the packaging itself?
Seth, let me chime in. I know where Kellogg is coming from, because I used to produce promotional materials. Okay, you can, because promotional materials are not regular. So you can actually lodge your toys that you put inside your Kellogg boxes, as part of promo, instead of as part of the SKU itself, because it's going to be very difficult to calculate that, because this thing is seasonal. So what you do is that if you have a promotional material, then you calculate how much that promo is put in the market, and then you will now declare it as part of promo. But again, you will still declare it as either rigid or flexible.
Okay, regardless whether it's a toy or whatever, right? So it's actually just as a whole, like a forecast that you might actually have in the market. Correct.
Correct. And promo materials would also include posters and tarpaulins. This becomes interesting now, no? If you read through the law, they placed promo materials under rigids. It's interesting. Again, it's up to you whether you want to put it as rigid or flexible. For us in business now, we would always like to look into where it's cheaper for us to recover, no? Anyway, it's your call, no? But again, because of that provision of law, you can declare it either as rigid or flexible. That's why the Zed's presentation here is you can declare it as any, but it can always be part of rigids.
Let's move forward. We have some case studies here, as mentioned a while ago, for biodegradable packaging. Let's say our company uses biodegradable packaging. Will this be included in our rigid plastic footprint? Is there separate computation for biodegradable plastics? What are the substantiation needed to prove that our packaging is biodegradable? Biodegradable plastics are currently excluded, as I mentioned. However, it is recommended to calculate them separately in your internal computations. The final decision regarding the inclusion of biodegradable plastic under the EPR has not been determined yet by DNR, and they are differing views and studies on the matter. Also, submit a computation of biodegradable plastics as part of the third-party audited reduction program report uploaded in the EPR portal. The biodegradable plastics shall comply with prevailing PNS standards from the Department of Trade and Industry, Bureau of Philippine Standards, and it is highly recommended to fully implement these voluntary standards for credibility and compliance. Can also secure an ETV or environmental technology verification from the DOST, Industrial Technology Development Institute. And lastly, we need additional justification to exclude biodegradable plastic, given recommendations from agencies such as the NAST, DOST, that biodegradable and compostable plastics should be part of EPR. Now, for another example, case number 2, business-to-business transactions, we produce directly for businesses such as, let's say, QSR, fast food chains, etc. Will these be included in our footprint? So if sold to commissary and part of industrial waste, these are not part of the footprint. For as long as the packaging does not end up as post-commercial or post-consumer waste, it is not part of your footprint. However, if the packaging is designed to be sent to the franchises, then they need to be included. And another case is packaging used for hazardous materials, such as pesticides, for example, or oil packaging. Let's say we produce plastic packaging for hazardous materials. Are these included in our plastic footprint? So the answer is yes, it is mandated and not exempted from the EPR law compliance. These may, however, be offset with non-hazardous packaging material credits. Hazardous waste recovery are actually encouraged by a take-back or reverse logistics program. Diversion to hazardous waste TSD facilities will allow certificate of treatment to be issued and third-party audited to generate waste diversion credit certificates for plastic footprint offsetting.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I have a question on the previous slide. Can you
Sure.
explain that in layman's term? The fourth bullet point.
So by diverting the packaging used for hazardous materials, you need to coordinate with TSD facilities accredited by DNR.
What is a
And these
TSD facility? What does TSD stand for? Sorry.
Treatment, storage, and disposal facility. Just to
Okay.
give you an idea, some of the companies that deal with packaging for hazardous materials would have a recovery program. Let's say you're selling pesticides to the market and you have a recovery program for the pesticide containers, no? So these pesticide containers can only be managed or treated by accredited TSD or treatment, storage, and disposal entity, no, duly registered with DNR. So what happens is that if your company, and this applies to many of our pesticide members here, members producing pesticides here, if you have a take-back program for the container, what you will need is that you will send those materials to a TSD facility, and the TSD facility diverts the waste and properly treats the waste. In this case, it is the TSD facility which becomes your waste diverter. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, because in
Okay.
order for you to offset that, you need the certificate of treatment coming from these TSD facilities. This
Okay.
is what you're gonna show the auditors.
So on our part, we only need that certificate in order to comply with our EPR program for the hazardous waste. In other words.
Yes, and
Mm.
as long as it's 20% of your hazardous waste.
Okay.
But as I mentioned on number 2 part, the second bullet, you don't need to actually recover your hazardous packaging waste. You can also offset that with non-hazardous packaging material credits.
Which means.
Which means if you're, let's say, you're dealing with rigid, then you can just get rigid packaging. It doesn't have to be
Okay. Okay,
a
got
package for hazardous materials.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Stella?
Got that. Thank
Yeah,
you
let
so
me-
much.
yeah,
Yes.
let me
Anything
add
else?
lang, no? Let me just add. Okay, now, securing a certificate of treatment or certificate of recycling or certificate of co-processing is not enough. Let me qualify lang. When you get a certificate of treatment or a certificate of recycling or a certificate of co-processing, the law mandates that that undergoes a third-party audit.
Yeah.
By a waste diverter. So what happens is that you will take that certificate, okay, in our model, you will take that certificate and that certificate, okay, would be the subject of the audit. Now, once it is audited already, that would generate now the plastic credits that you can use to offset your footprint.
Okay.
Yep.
So in
And
other
then
words,
make it more
sorry. Go ahead. In other words, it will be more simple to just recover non-hazardous waste.
That would
To
be the
offset.
it goes through the same process now, because even if you recover non-hazardous waste, you would
Still
still
need
have
audit.
to conduct a third-party audit for that.
Yeah.
But it's cheaper, to be honest.
Mhm.
It's
Yes,
cheaper for them
yes.
to recover
Because
ng
you don't
hazard.
have to go through the TSD facility.
Correct.
Yes. The
Yeah.
All
TSD
right.
you have to pay them.
Okay, got that. Thank you so much for clarifying.
You're welcome. And for the last case is packaging for raw materials like flour, sugar. So our products are packaged in plastics and there's currently an existing process for its retrieval. Should we still include this in our footprint? So it is part of your footprint only if the packaging material like sacks ends up with the consumer. If the packaged flour or sugar is supplied under a business-to-business transaction and not sold to the market in its original packaging, it will not be part of the plastic footprint. That's actually the end of that part of the presentation. And for the last part, we're going to go through the questions on footprint offsetting. First is, do we need to recover our own plastic footprint? Like what was discussed a while ago for hazardous packaging material, there's no need to recover your own footprint. You can actually purchase certified plastic waste diversion credits from recognized waste diverters through the portal or directly. And should you decide to do your own recovery and diversion, you will need to have this properly audited. And I'll be discussing that later on in our EPR model, so you see what we mean. And next is, how does the credit system work? Where do we buy credits? So member enterprises must procure certified plastic waste credits from recognized waste diverters. And these credits are a way to offset the amount of plastic waste that an enterprise generates. And rigid can only be offset with rigid. Same with flexible, can only be offset with flexible. That's under section 44F. So in the EPR model, as you can see, these are the major players in the portal. We have the obliged enterprise, we have the waste diverters, and the certifying bodies, which are the third-party auditors. Of course, PARMs coming in with our portal and reporting directly to the government. And as we mentioned, any footprint of the obliged enterprise must be verified, whether rigids or flexibles, and the standards we have for guidelines are available. And once it's verified, that can be input in our EPR portal. Same with the waste diverters, their diversion should be also audited in a form of a certificate of recycling, certificate of treatment, or co-processing. And this certificate needs to be verified by a third-party auditor before it can be traded. And these can actually be traded in our portal between obliged enterprise and the waste diverters. That's why in the portal, we have all these entities that needs to be registered, both the obliged enterprise, the waste diverters, and the third-party auditors. And farms will be reporting our ECAR by next year directly to the government. It's a consolidated report. And at any time, any obliged enterprise can choose to opt out of the EPR program should they decide to report directly to the government. So is there a list of waste diverters? These are basically our current recognized waste diverters from mechanical recycling, alternative recycling, recovery and transport, and fuel and energy. Currently, we will be conducting a similar capacity building program to ensure that all of these waste diverters understand the requirements of the EPR program. So right now, we do recognize them, but of course, they still need to be able to follow the proper procedures so we can have their diversion credited and offset with your footprint.
Zed, I have a question.
Yes.
So
sir.
you suggest that instead of like dealing directly with these diverters, we go through farms so that you can negotiate for better prices.
That is definitely one way to do it, sir. Should you have, like, let's say, a waste diverter that is not in the list, we will recommend that you endorse them to us so we can also orient them on how to go about the EPR program. And also, of course, help you with the diversion through our network of other obliged enterprise, their requirements. So it will also help waste diverters expand their networks and gain new clients in terms of waste credits.
Okay, thanks.
Rolly, can I add to that? We encourage you to directly deal with waste diverters. I'm still working on the taxation issue. Kasi if it goes through PARMS, even if PARMS is a non-stock, non-profit, we have yet to submit the documents, no? So there might be some tax implications. While we will help negotiate a certain price. Let's take, for example, what Bert said, no? Have already secured 20 million kilos. We are now looking into whether you buy it directly from the
Waste
diverter
diverter.
or you pay us and we will buy it for you. To be honest, at first, we did not plan to do this. No, but then we saw that there is a need for us to consolidate so that we can negotiate for you at a better price. And that is the only reason why we're doing it. Now, in our model before, it's not covered. But then what happens is that once we have negotiated on your behalf, it will be placed on the platform via your booking. So we can book everything for you. And then
Okay.
ideally, the payment should be direct to them. But let's see, if it needs to course through us, we will try to find a way to do that.
So we can deal directly with them, but we will use the negotiated price by farm. So we get a lower price. Okay.
Yes. So parang the 20,000 tons is a secured booking already. So mag-book na kayo, then you just we just link you na, okay, this is
5 pesos lang yun.
yeah, 5 pesos to. The idea of letting you guys go directly to the diverters is for you to secure a lower price if you can. So parang energy purchase yan . You can go to the spot market or you can do it's your call, no? It's your call.
But the max that we have to pay is whatever you negotiated.
Correct.
Okay.
Pero kapag nag-commit kayo, pakiusap lang, bilhin nyo kasi kung hindi, mapapasubo kami. Diba? Mamaya, if you make a booking, we urge you to take that. And because, it's going to be difficult for us, then I will have said and Bert make abono.
Hi, Crispian. Hi, Crispian. Sorry, I just want to double check my understanding. So meaning if we have already pre-booked the waste credit, we don't exactly need to go directly to the waste diverter because it's kind of like being completed. Am I getting it correct?
No, what happens is this. When you book, it's like we are facilitating the amount for you. Let's say Kellogg books 10 tons, no? Okay. Then what happens is that the 10 tons is a secured booking with the co-processing facility. Then you can pay them directly because that is a negotiated.
Okay. Okay.
But we will see, no? We will see. I just hired a CPA lawyer to help me work with BIR on or the Bureau of Internal Revenue on the taxation part of it. Because the problem is that if we buy it directly from the diverter and then we will pass it on to you at zero profit, we might end up paying taxes, and that is the concern of farms at this time.
Okay. So, but if we deal directly with the facilitator, I mean the facility itself, right? We just need to have the report and record and actually uploaded it into the portal, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank
and you
you.
pay them directly.
Mhm.
Don't force the money through us. We don't want.
Okay.
That's added work for us.
Okay. Thank you. Got it.
Sir Chris, when dealing with these diverters, shall we inform that we are members of farms?
Oh yeah,
because the booking was made by you, right?
Correct. No, we
Okay.
will inform them.
We will endorse.
Okay. There will be an endorsement from farms. Okay. Thank you.
I think, Seth, what we will do is that we will give a list of buyers for the
Yeah.
20,000 and we can pass it on to them. And then
Yes.
at least when they talk to you, they already know that you have already booking. And yes, it's good that you can say that it's also with farms. Please let us know. But later on, if it's in the portal, it's going to be a lot easier already.
Okay. So this is not just one diverter, right?
No.
A list
We're
of-
working with other diverters.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you. I am trying to secure rigids at 2 pesos, at least half the cost of flexibles. No, and then the range of prices for your budgetary is 5 to 15 pesos for flex. Let's say half of that for rigids. That is the target.
Okay.
I'm not committing, but it's the target that that farms are working on. And Seth and Bert are working very hard to keep those prices lower.
Okay.
Okay.
Noted.
I'd just like to add that the earlier you do it, the better, because parang supply and demand yan eh. The closer you are to the deadline,
So
there
parang
may be a tendency, di ba, to
parang may
pass it
reservation.
But when is actually the last due date to make the booking or the pre-booking?
That's something that we will be announcing soon.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Bert. Thank you.
Perhaps in the meantime, you can email
Yeah.
again. It's supposed to be, the booking should be supposed to be in our portal. We're just we're waiting for the developer. But in the meantime, if you want to secure your orders, just write Seth or Bert, no, and then we will put a record. At least you have secured already. No, because if we need more, we have to talk to the supplier.
Okay.
I'd like to throw Crispin another question, which is already occurring twice. For those companies who are already doing their own recovery of their waste materials, they're asking how it will be now handled. One of my answers is that they have to complete the loop. If they have the raw materials, it's not yet a credit. Diba? It has to pass through a recycler for that material to be credited to them as a recycling, as a waste credit. Diba? Kasi nalilito sila, yung own effort doon nila, how do they take advantage of that? Does that become automatically a waste credit? I said, not yet. Maybe you can clarify that further.
Okay. For companies, I know that there are companies doing their own recovery programs already. So what needs to happen is proper documentation. Keep that in mind. No? For what you have recovered from January to now, you have to properly document it and identify the source where it is coming from and have the necessary documentation so that when you get audited, there's a document trail. Make sure that you are able to separate your recovered waste from your customers or post-consumer from your industrial waste. Because you did not declare industrial waste as your footprint, you cannot use your industrial waste to offset your footprint. So with that documentation, it doesn't, Bert is correct, it doesn't end up in you recovering it. You have to send it to a facility that either recycles or treats the material. And once you have completed that loop, you send the material to them. Then what happens is that you ask for a certificate of recycling. And once you have, or treatment, once you have that certificate of recycling or treatment, you can now submit that to a third-party auditor for that to be audited. Now, can a company, an obliged enterprise, be a waste diverter? Why not? If you have programs in place. Then what happens is that your company or your association, in that case CropLife, can register as a waste diverter, and then whatever goes through that system will be audited so that it can be translated to footprints to offset, or to credits, plastic credits to offset the footprint. It's kind of complicated. Again, we will assist you if you need. No?
Okay, another question from the chat box. Do we have the partners na TSD facilities?
No, we don't. But
Wala, di ba?
talk to any TSD facility accredited by the DNR. Yeah, you can go to DNR. They have a list. And then once you have talked to the TSD facility, the next step is enroll them, encourage them to enroll as a waste diverter so that they can be recognized in our system.
Okay, another question. What is the calendar period for 20% credit?
This is the calendar for 2022, January 1 to December 31.
Okay, and then is this 20% for import volume or actual sales volume during the period?
So this is sales, definitely sales volume. Okay, we still have this one last slide before we can actually proceed.
Sige, meron pa pala.
So how can we audit our footprint? So the NEC will collaborate with the Auditing and Assurance Council, or AASC, of the Philippines to establish uniform standards for EPR Act auditing and reporting. This includes developing and promulgating a standardized compliance auditing manual and implementing an accreditation system for independent third-party auditors under the EPR Act. Until the rules of accreditation of third-party auditors for EPR compliance audits are issued, the Council, or AASC, will develop minimum qualifications for independent auditors. In the meantime, a certified public accountant will conduct the compliance audit and certify the accuracy of the ECAR, including their signature and relevant information. This includes CPA certificate number, BOA PRC registration number, professional tax receipt number, and tax ID. If you're looking for an auditor, of course, we do suggest to work with your existing auditor. But again, any independent auditors with these qualifications will suffice.
Question on this. So there's no program yet for how to go about the audit.
There's no specifics yet in terms of the standardized compliance auditing manual. But again, we do have some standards that we've developed that can be used as a starting point. And maybe we can also suggest that to DNR. That's why we're encouraging members to use it and give us their feedback. So we may be able to suggest this to DNR.
So is it available in the portal?
At the moment, not yet, but we will definitely send a link to those members that have already registered. As I've mentioned, if you already register in the portal, we'll send you a link to access a copy of the EPR program together with the standards.
Okay, yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, speaking of which, please do register to our portal, and so you can have access to these standards and the EPR program for your reference. And we're now accepting any more questions regarding the EPR program.
Okay, may question dito, no? Yung our packaging has both rigid and flex. Can we add to our rigid footprint the total footprint that we have for our flexibles, meaning the labels? The labels are flex. Will they add their labels to the total footprint of the rigid? I think that's what they're asking.
Okay, so, let me get that slide. So let's say you do have a bottle with a flexible label. You have an option to just put everything under rigid, since it's a weight of the SKU. But should you want to separate that, that's fine as well. But again, the whole goal is to minimize the cost. So whichever that will be cheaper would be probably the better option.
Zed, let me add to that, no? Just to expand on this, no? Normally kasi what you have is that you might have secondary packaging on this. So you can have your secondary packaging prorated and integrated into the bottle. Let's say your bottle is sold at a case of 24, right? And then you put a tape, you put some plastics to wrap it, no? So whatever that packaging, you can actually put it as part of the bottle. Kasi when you look at the provision of law, rigid packaging, including its label, including promotional material, that's how they spelled it out in the law. So we have the option of putting it, no? You see letter B, right? So it's very clear that you can actually put it as part of the rigid, but it doesn't preclude you from separating that and putting it as flexible if you opt to.
Okay, another question. Do fast food restaurants need central facility for their waste before they divert? That's a question. Hindi naman do they need a central facility?
Well, if okay, I guess that it really depends on the waste diverter that they're working with. But assuming that this question is about them collecting it, again, the whole process will require it ends up in the recycling or co-processing. So if it will help in terms of managing that, then that would be a good thing. But I guess it's not really a need. But if it will help, why not?
Let me add to that. Okay, I think this pertains to the branches, no, your branches, no, or your franchisees. So what's going to happen is that if you have a recovery program, the same principle follows, no. If you have a recovery program in a mall, in a fast food chain, you know, in a branch, that recovery program needs to complete the loop, no, as Bert said. So what you need to do is that once you have recovered it, you have to divert it or send it to a recycling or co-processing facility. And then using the same principle, have them issue the certificate. And then that would be the subject of audit that would be translated to and once after auditing, that would be translated to a credit that you can use to offset. Again, just to fulfill the requirements of law, that it needs to be audited. But then it can only be audited if you close end-to-end loop from the recovery to the final treatment or collection.
Okay, sa Unicity, Franco Jorge is raising his hand.
Yes,
Sir,
Frank.
hi, Zen. Hi, Sir Chris. My question is, if we have our own, we're working with a diverter for recovery. If, for example, when auditing period comes, or when we check, it still won't reach the 20% for flexibles and rigids. The balance, can you actually just purchase the credits already? Or if you say your recovery working with the waste diverter, that's you're locked into that only.
Sorry, can you repeat that? Sorry, it was choppy a bit.
Oh, sorry. So we have recovery and we're working with a waste diverter. Now, if by the end of the audit period or within the audit period, we notice that we won't make the 20%, can you just purchase the balance credits? Or if you say that your recovery working with a waste diverter, that's it for you. You have no other option but to just do that. Can it be combined?
I think I'll answer that now. That's why we have the portal. The portal becomes a menu. You can choose, you can select up to complete your 20%. So aside from what you've already accomplished, kulang pa. That's why the portal is there. You go to the portal, you will see a list of certificates available. Then you purchase from the portal to complete your 20%. So hindi ka nakalock in sa isang waste diverter. You can have several. And DNR will be computing naman yung total weight or volume pala. Hindi naman yung names of waste diverters. It's a total volume.
And also, if I can add, so let's say you did not meet the target and ComEcar, Farms is actually obliged to report any companies that did not meet the target. However, of course, being a member of Farms, we will do whatever we can to make sure that you don't get penalized. There will be some options available. Another one is being able to purchase credits from other waste diverters. We will even have the option to invite the obliged enterprise to purchase some credits on I guess Sir Crispin, can I discuss the credit bank?
No, not yet. Let me qualify that. No. Hindi, kasi ang problema kapag sinabi natin na may bangko na tayo, aasa lahat doon. No, it's not. Okay, let's do it this way. Okay, now, let's say one company falls short. No? Okay, but then you have to understand that Farms, the design of Farms is that we will only submit a consolidated report of all footprints total and all credits or diversion total. Total to total yan. Now, we have volunteering entities. That means we are expecting a potential instance where the credits might exceed the 20%. No? The diversion might exceed the 20%. So, kunyari, nag-short ka, but technically speaking, you are not falling short as far as the government is concerned. However, to be fair to all parties, we will require you as a company who fell short to either pay 2 times the cost of diversion to Farms as a penalty, right? Or Farms will have no option but to report you to DNR as mandated by the IRR. Because the IRR tells us that the PRO will need to report who is short, right? Pero if you just pay the penalty to Farms, no, so that we can have that seed money to buy credits also, that is workable also.
So yeah, and just to add,
thank you.
So basically, as Sir Crispin mentioned, we do have volunteering entities, and as you know, volunteering entities, they can already purchase waste credits. but at the same time, we will not require them to submit their footprint. So basically, we'll just get the credits. The credits will fall under farms, so it's going to increase our credits. That's why it will be able to compensate for any companies that will not meet the 20%. But yeah, so basically, those are the options that you have.
Okay, Ms. Rolly of Personal Collection is raising.
Thank you. I have a few questions. So for example, my footprint for 2022 is 100 tons. And then I was able to reduce that to 80 tons in 2023 by the end of the year. Would that count as 20%? Or will that fulfill the 20% requirement? Or I still have to calculate the 20 in 2022? I still have to offset my 20%.
You have to qualify because your 2022 footprint has to be, 20% reduction or diversion pala na kailangan, yung 2022. So if you do something in 2023, iba na naman yun. That's for
So
next
that will
year.
be counted
For the
used
succeeding year.
2024.
Oh, 2024 na.
Okay. And also, I read the IRR. It says if you use recycled material for your packaging, like recycled PET.
Yeah.
But if I like purchase my recycled PET from China, would that be counted? I mean, I still use recycled, but it's recycled by the China.
Coming from, yeah.
Crispin, ano ba ang sagot doon? Pagka-imported, Teka, naka-mute ka, Chris.
Nakakahalata na ako sa inyo pag nahirap tanong sa akin yung pinapasa. Okay, ganito yan. If you import from China, it will not be counted as EPR compliance because that is the waste of China. However, if the rPET produced by China, okay, you can justify that the source of the plastics, assuming, okay, you can prove that the flakes came from the Philippines, that may be considered.
Okay.
Right?
It came from
I'll give you some examples as it is right now. No?
China and then used back. Okay.
Yeah. As long as ma-prove mo yung trail niya na nag-export papunta doon and then bumalik. No? It's your supplier in China. If they can prove that they
they're sourcing the PET from the Philippines, for example. Okay. And my last question is, if you convert from non-environmentally acceptable packaging to environmentally acceptable packaging, does that give you a credit, or you still have to account for the environmentally acceptable packaging, like laminates plus foil laminates into mono material sachet?
That's under reduction. Yes.
Reduction yon.
Reduction.
Under reduction. Which is actually part of an EPR program. You need to have reduction and recovery programs. So yes.
So the reduction does not add credit to your like 20%.
No, it's a separate item, di ba? Separate yun eh. Yung reduction na sinasabi sa umpisa, hiwalay yun sa 20% quota that you have to meet. So
there is separate incentives for reduction program, which is currently being developed by DNR.
Okay.
So for all reduction programs, including adding recycled content or doing refilling or even mga IEC, all of these will have corresponding incentives later on that DNR is currently developing. So that's why we need to keep these documented and audited as well, which will be part of the ECAR report.
Okay.
Follow up ko lang yung sinabi ni Zed, ano? So, okay, it applies to biodegradable, refill, etc. When you look at the EPR program of farms, you would see on the reduction, there is a menu of choices of activities. Now, if you apply recycled content, for example, no, if you use recycled, okay, it may not be able to generate credits unless you get credits for the recycled material. What we are doing is that we are pushing DENR to provide us credits, no? Okay, automatic credits from the reduction. So if I do IEC, if I do refilling, if I put recycled content, if I choose biodegradable assuming they would accept that as a more sustainable option, no? Then at least we will ask DENR to give us credits for that. No?
Yeah, okay.
So that is why it is quite very, very important for you as a company to document all of this. How many ML was done for refill? How many did you spend for IEC? Everything needs to be properly documented so that it would be part of the ECA report. Then we will then talk to DNR na we are submitting this as ECA. So hopefully there would be credits automatically given to us for that. We're still arguing, Rolly, ano? There's this argument that no, that's double counting of credits, correct? But then our argument, but please help us argue more. The argument that we have is that you will only realize a shift if you provide incentives. So we're not looking at it as a credit, but as an incentive for companies to do the reduction. And that is the general idea, right? So again, I saw some of the questions. Biodegradable packaging will be recorded, quantified, audited to avail of, for now, reduction until government tells us that you have to recover that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, merong question dito in the audits. So audits are not expected to start until September 30.
No, definitely not. So that's why we are already opening our standards for auditors as well, and we encourage already all obliged enterprise to start dealing with auditors so that because of course this is a work in progress. There will be a lot of questions, so it's better that we already start getting audited for our footprint.
Okay, another question from Kellogg. Does this mean when we have arranged with the diverter with the purchase of the waste credit, including their audit report into the portal, it's already considered that we meet the 20% reduction compliance by end of 2023? I think this is only the second part, di ba? We're talking about two-part compliance. The first is the reduction, the other one is the recovery. Yeah. I think this one completes the second part, di ba? 20% recovery. But they might miss out that there is still another component to complete the compliance, the reduction part.
Yeah.
Bert, you might want to share Eden as a quick out under the reduction program. Now, when you look at reduction program, if you cannot do any of the reduction programs, you can still sponsor a scholar or sponsor information education campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a partnership with Don Bosco School of Theology, and they are working on scholarships to train people to help in the EPR implementation. And so the trainees, they're welcoming sponsors to sponsor scholarships, and each scholarship I think is equivalent to 50,000 per scholar. And so maybe several companies can group together, can sponsor a scholar to comply with that reduction program that I was talking about. This first part, yung education component is acceptable as a way of complying with the first requirement.
Yeah, and this program is also available for your staff, your employees, or anyone from your company, so they can also enroll as part of your reduction program, basically.
Okay, thank you for the information.
You're welcome.
Bert, if I may, no,
Yes.
there's a mention of Christine, no. Would you like to clarify regarding recovery for biodegradable plastic? You previously mentioned that you will oppose the idea to DNR. We don't want to oppose DNR, no. We will work with DNR.
We will propose.
To qualify, no. However, PARMS is encouraging to keep an internal record as we still obliged to upload the record. Again, the record on biodegradable materials will be lodged as a reduction option in the interim. Until government tells us that you have to recover that, it will be part of reduction. I qualify, provided that you have to ensure that biodegradable plastics conform with local PNS, Philippine National Standards, or are recognized by the eco-labeling program under the Green Choice Seal. So there's two modalities that you can do. No, you can have it. No, it's there on the fourth bullet. No, there are existing Philippine national standards on biodegradable plastics. Make sure that your biodegradables conform to that. No, or there is also a modality where you can have the product, the packaging, be recognized with a Green Choice Seal under the Philippine Eco-Labeling Program.
Okay. Another question about fast food again. We know that fast food restaurants dispose their solid waste every night through the LGU garbage collector. What will be the contribution of LGU in the area of fast food restaurants regarding their plastic waste? It's a follow-up question. Yeah. Does it mean restaurants will not dispose their plastic waste to LGU from now on and collect an audit to divert for the certificate? Maybe I'll answer this now.
Okay, sige.
Because the LGU, siyempre meron silang garbage contract. If they are implementing a system where they will separate the plastic, bring it to a recycler, the recycler completes the loop of recycling, then the LGU can now claim the credit, or the recycler to whom they sent it can now issue a certificate of diversion. So ano pa rin yun? You're still part of that whole loop. You gave it to the LGU gives it to a recycler, and the recycler completes the loop of recycling and issues a certificate, then it's part of the system, the EPR system. But if the LGU does not separate it, it just collects everything, then throws it to the landfill, I don't know how that will be credited, pero halo-halo pa rin yan eh. What the government is encouraging is for us to segregate the plastics into two types, rigids and flexibles, and deliver it to the accredited or proper recycling facility. So bawas basura yon doon sa LGU pagka dinivert ninyo through your own system. That will be a plus or an advantage to the LGU. But some LGUs, meron na silang existing operation, then you can just cooperate with the LGU so that your plastics can reach the proper recycling facility.
And just to add to that, actually an LGU can also be a waste diverter. There are some LGUs that's already coordinating with us in terms of becoming a waste diverter. Like what Sir Bert said, it needs to close the loop. So what we do is there are LGUs that are able to collect efficiently, and they only need to partner with a recycler or a co-processor. So this is where farms do come in. So we do want to capacitate LGU as well, because we are an archipelagic nation, and collecting waste should be done in other islands, not just in the city. So we want to definitely coordinate with the many LGUs and try to capacitate them and link them to proper recycling facilities.
Seth, let me add to that.
Yes.
Right now, we are in the process of doing a lot of pilots. No, we are open. Farms is open to pilot with an LGU. Kasi di ba, LGU partnership is embedded as one of the options for us. No, it would be nice for you to have a partnership with the LGU. We can actually definitely assist the LGU in this pilot stage, and farms can even commit, to buy all the generated credits by a recycler or a treater. That's an advantage right now. We can commit at reasonable prices. Now we can commit to buy it. Diba? So and then in the course of it, we can now help them. At least they are assured that if they are able to generate credits, there's already a buyer. So we are open to partner with any company here who would want to work with an LGU with a diverter. Of course, you will take a portion of that diverted waste, for your own credits, but we will be more than happy. Wag lang sana lahat, we might not be able to handle everyone, but we will definitely be be there on pilot basis, especially if they're going to offer it to us cheap.
Okay. Crispin, I have a theoretical question. Kung yung ating mga ina-accumulate na credit sumobra ng 2023, will that still be honored in 2024?
Technically not, but then we are exploring the development of a credit bank only for the excess credits. Meaning, as long as, okay, because you see, we have a marketplace in our portal, di ba? In the portal, you can buy and sell eh. What if, no, at the end of the year, nobody wants to buy what a diverter has already recovered, no, or credits, surplus credits, no? As long as it is surplus credits, we are making a proposal to DNR that farms will keep it as a credit bank, no, for future use. Okay, not necessarily for sale but for future use. Para tayong nag-OPSF. No, if you look at the principle of the price stabilization fund, we will keep those credits, and then those credits now will only be used if there is a disruption in the system. And farms will have a separate fund to, put up for that. So, and then the general idea is that, okay, the investing partners has money with farms. That money will be used to establish a credit bank. This is outside of the EPR already, right? Then that bank now, assuming may emergency, syempre first dibs yung naglabas ng pera, yung nag-invest doon. We're still working on the mechanics, but we will update you. But then surplus credits, farms is prepared to purchase surplus credits. We are not sure if DNR would allow us to use it for the future. But then again, we will have to defend it. Kasi nakalagay kasi doon, it has to be recovered this year. Your footprint on last year should be recovered this year. Diba? I don't think they will allow spillover for next year. But let's see. Hindi pa klaro yan.
Okay. Ang theoretical question ko doon, another one. Kung yung compliance mo this year, umabot kang 30%, hindi naman pwedeng hindi pwedeng for the next year yung excess 10 mo.
Sorry, you cannot. You just give it to the country, just an added contribution because the law encourages you to go beyond. No?
The minimum, lang yun. For the love of country na lang.
Yeah.
Okay, ang last question siguro, si Crispin, ikaw makasagot nito. Do you plan to submit a position paper on the biodegradable, compostable, and like packaging to be given credit as part of the EPR compliance and not only as reduction? Ano ba dito?
No, in the development of uniform standards, as Zed mentioned earlier, we will not only on biodegradable, all aspects of reduction needs to be accorded credits, and we're pushing for that. So we will not necessarily come up with a position paper, but then we will defend it as much as we can, no? But as I said, if you have added inputs as to why it should be included, no, then we will use those inputs.
Zed, you can answer this. Can you please explain ulit daw yung packaging used for hazardous material? I think you already answered this.
Before that, see Sir Ramon from CropLife, he mentioned that they have an existing TSD provider, but they're not under PARM's list. Will this be acceptable under the process? So as long as the TSD provider is will issue a certificate properly audited, and that is already complying, and at the same time, if they want to be part of PARMS, it's as easy as registering in our portal so that any diversion that they do can be offset directly from the portal. But of course, you can still deal directly with any waste diverters, but again, that is if you opt out of the EPR program. But if you're part of the program, all the transactions needs to be in the portal. And that question on
hazardous. Can you explain now about the packaging used for hazardous material?
Okay.
It's a general
So let's say
question.
you do produce a packaging for hazardous material. Since these are not exempted, you still need to offset them with the corresponding credit, whether it's a rigid or a flexible. So basically, you can offset non-hazardous packaging material that's rigid if you're dealing with rigid or flexible. If you're going to be dealing with your packaging for hazardous material and you're going to recycle that, then it needs to be sent to a TSD facility that will provide a certificate of treatment for these waste material. And of course, everything needs to be audited at the same time. So basically, that's the simplest explanation is you just need to offset rigid to rigid, flexible to flexible, disregard whether it's packaging for hazardous material. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, it's 11:31, di ba? I think that's
Bert,
yes.
there is a question, no, on ano. You
Ito.
would say that we are breaking down the capacity building and it will be a series. Right now, we are focused on footprint calculation. We are not yet at diversion. Because why? We have decided not to flood you with information because internally nano-nosebleed din kami. So, I mean, we are going to provide this in tranches. So we're starting, yes, there would be, but the BIR, we still have to work with BIR on that now. To the question of Franco. But what, okay, we have the obliged now. Then what would be next probably would be the footprint calculation. Now we will have a focused discussion with your, so that's why you have to have your auditors. The next series would be Zed, if correct me if I'm wrong, auditors, right, for footprint calculation. Then the next series would be on waste diverters. Then the next series would be auditing for waste diverters. That's how we are framing it right now. No, I think what is important for many companies here, as early as now, calculate your footprint. That's why Zed is pushing you for a target date of June 30 so that you know already your footprint. And once you know your footprint, now we are now preparing now for that to be audited by your third-party auditor, and so that you'll know how much you would need to divert. Please do not wait until September 30. At least for the first year of implementation, we will be guided by not only the interim standards that we do, but we have simplified our interim standards. No, as long as you can declare, whatever footprint you have based on the guidance that we've given you. We will be answerable to DNR on your behalf on that case. No.
Okay.
Is there anything else? May mga bagong pumasok?
Meron pa. Isn't it risky to have the audits done if the NEC and Bureau have yet to release the approved auditing manual?
Well, if we have done this, well, again, yeah, I would agree, Lisa. It may be you can decide to defer it, but then what we will push, if and when. Again, we can wait if you want to, no? But can we afford to wait, no? Unless you know your audited footprint, how can you recover? You might not have enough time to recover when it's September already. Okay, baka you might run out of credits available in the market. Now, those are the scenarios, but it's really up to the company. However, for PARMS, this is how we are approaching it. We have submitted our EPR program, and I say we collectively because you are all EPR members of PARMS, no? We have already submitted our EPR program to the DNR. So now, what we're saying right now is that for the first year, at least for the first year, we will use this, and we will, and I believe DNR will agree. If DNR issues something on September, we will ask them to adopt it on the second year, not on the first year. It's not going to be fair to us. We will just have to talk to DNR about it. I don't think there would be risky. And remember, we will be the ones feeding the information to DNR also on how the audit should be done, how the uniform standards. That's why it is important for us to get your feedback on our draft standards. We're doing this exercise. We have the draft standards, no? Just to let you know, only 2 entities have draft standards right now. It is PARMS and PCX. We are expecting that when DENR comes up with the uniform standards, we are expecting and hoping that they would take these standards and harmonize them. Not to say that it's not harmonized in the first place.
Hmm.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, we are working much faster than DENR. Pero Lisa, no choice eh. We are mandated by law to implement EPR now. As much as you see, why are we doing it just now? Our timelines are much earlier than this. The reason why we're doing it just now is that we were waiting for DENR to give us the guidance. They're not giving us the guidance, so we have to execute already.
Yeah.
But we have the numbers. I feel naman that DENR would be supportive and would listen to us naman. I mean, we're big. We are 166 or 180 and counting.
Yes.
As far as OEs are concerned, I think we have the numbers to have a proper representation with the regulators.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we can end here now. It's no more questions. It's already 11:37.
So yeah, thank you everyone for joining the workshop.